But that leads to bitterness.
Yeah.
Undealt with emotions,
Yes.
undealt with situations will lead to held on bitterness.
Yes.
And bitterness, remember, is the poison. It is what hardens the heart and kills the dreams, aspirations, and forwardness of the good in your life.
Thinkless. What are we not thinking enough about? Join us as we evaluate our thought life. I'm Parker, and I'm here with my co-host, Amber. Welcome to the show. Amber, quick question. Are you getting better or are you getting bitter?
Oh man. Oh man. Yeah. Bitterness, man, that's a tough one. They say, what poison do you want to take? And bitterness is a strong one. Bitterness is a killer, man.
It is.
Yeah.
It infects.
Yep.
And it's also, it's evident when somebody's bitter. It comes out.
Yeah.
And it comes out in actions. It comes out in words. It comes out in reactions.
Yep.
So I think you can tell a lot about a person when their reaction is reactionary or defensive.
Yeah.
Or a posture of kind of like this.
Yeah.
Like I feel like this posture speaks to a level of bitterness that somebody's maybe operating out of.
Yeah. I'd say that bitterness is a killer because bitterness is a silent killer of a lot of things in our life. When bitterness sets in, bitterness is what causes our heart to harden. And it says, for out of our heart flows our life. So if your heart is completely hardened, like I like to think of it like this. If you look at the word heart, in the center of heart is ear. So that is how we hear and respond. And, for me, that's how I respond to my best friend Jesus, is through my heart, which is the ear in which I hear him. So if my heart is hard, it's like, hello, anybody there? Like you can't hear anything, so then it starts killing friendships, relationships, careers, dreams, goals, aspirations. I mean, it just starts killing all kinds of things forward. And it's one of those things that you have to self-check a lot. Like, am I allowing some bitterness to set in my life? I went through a season where I became super bitter. Oh my gosh. That's why my response was, that was one of the hardest 2 years of my life when I became so bitter.
How because I have many examples of whenever I have been bitter as well, which I will tell. I feel very, very okay with being very vulnerable and sharing some of those pieces of my heart. But I'm interested to know for you though, in that season that you were living in that bitterness, what did that kind of look like for it to just kind of sit and dwell and maybe the bitterness continue to add on?
Oh, for sure. It builds. I mean, it's a poison that just keeps giving, man.
Yeah.
It's funny because hindsight, right? Hindsight 2020. Towards the end of my bitterness, when I was like completely at the end of myself, man, like you just rid yourself completely. I was asking the Lord, like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get so bitter? And the root of that bitterness for me started with a little bitty small lie. And that little bitty small lie was, it doesn't really matter what you do. It doesn't really matter that you're kind. It doesn't really matter that you love all the time. It doesn't really matter that you serve me and read the word and you seek me and you do all these kind things for people and try to help others. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Like, it's not changing the world or making anything different.
Yeah.
And I'm still looking at the same problems. I'm still not reaching my goals. I'm still not getting what I want in life, and I didn't even realize that it was just like one big moment triggered this small little lie that I started partnering with. And then I'm like, yeah, really doesn't. And then people would say, oh, just like being kind is just easy for you. And I'm like, really? You think so?
Yeah.
Actually, no, it's not. You really want to know what I think? You really want to know what I hear and what I think I want to say? Like, I went there.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I was just so not the person I wanted to be. I
Mm-hmm.
was miserable. I was frustrated. I was exhausted. You know, when you
Mm-hmm.
start hearing yourself say, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired, that
Yeah.
is a note to yourself
Mm.
that something needs to change in your life.
And that, I feel like, that saying alone is almost like a badge of honor
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said it, of course, but how many people do you hear saying it? Man, how are you? Whew, busy, or I'm
Yeah.
tired. And I do feel like both of those responses, whether it's like, okay, well, busyness, yes, I
Yeah.
feel like the more full my calendar is, the less I'm able to like really maybe like
Deal.
deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because it's easy to pack and escape almost through busyness,
Yeah.
because I don't want to sit with
Yeah.
something to feel
For sure.
something.
Yeah.
So I'll be busy. I'll be busy because I don't want to feel.
But that leads to bitterness.
Yeah.
Undealt with emotions,
Yes. Yeah.
undealt with situations will lead to held on bitterness.
Yes.
And bitterness, remember, is the poison. It is
Mhm.
what hardens the heart and kills the dreams, aspirations, and
Yep.
forwardness of the good in your
Yep.
life.
Yep.
So if we can stay so busy, or you can stay so tired, like I'm just so
Yeah.
tired, I'm just so tired, that you don't have the energy to do anything good, or what
Yeah.
does it matter? I mean,
Yeah.
you just start getting into that. You really got to start checking your heart
Yeah.
condition.
Yeah.
Like, where is your heart? How do you start changing at the fundamental basis of your heart?
Can I tell you a very recent story?
Let's do it.
Because this is real.
Okay.
This happened several weeks ago.
Yeah.
Where I was faced with kind of a difficult situation.
Yeah.
I've talked about it before, but my uncle passed,
Yeah.
and I was close to him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a default of mine is just be like, hey, we're good.
Yeah.
Like, we're
Right.
good. And I'll speak to why I feel that way sometimes later,
Yeah.
here shortly.
Right.
But so it's hard because it's not easy necessarily for me to let people in
Yeah.
on.
Mhm.
So therefore, sometimes whenever I am struggling, it's hard for me to be like, hey, can you pray for me?
Yeah.
I've grown. I've matured a ton of that where I've welcomed people into some of those.
That's good.
But also there was one of my good buddies, and there's a resolution to this story, but
Sure.
one of my good buddies knew that I was faced with this difficult situation,
Yeah.
and I let him in to know that it was hard.
Yeah.
But kind of through the whole weekend, there wasn't the weekend that I was back and kind of facilitating all these different things. There wasn't much follow up from him. So it was kind of that expectation, that unspoken expectation a little bit, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so, I didn't hear from him, although he was one of the guys that knew that like all of this stuff was going on in my life.
Yeah.
And so like didn't receive a simple text or didn't receive whatever.
Yeah.
And I saw that, oh man, like I just wanted someone to reach out.
Yeah.
And I didn't have someone reach out. And like, so then what started to kind of dwell and build was bitterness.
Yep.
And was like, okay, well, cool. I guess he doesn't care. Like, no one cares. I get
Not
like,
going back to that again.
exactly.
I'm not tapping that again.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
So now it was easy for any little thing to continue to stack on top of any little thing that he did, continue to stack on top of. But fast forward several weeks, and this is more recently, that I told him, I said, hey man, first off, I want to apologize to you because for these last little while, I've held bitterness towards you.
Yeah.
And that's on me. That's on me. Now, I wish you would have reached out. It would have meant a lot, but I didn't tell you to. And so, and I didn't let you in to the degree that I could have.
Yeah.
But I'm just letting you know that I held this towards you, but I don't want to, because you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Like there's nothing wrong that you did.
Yeah.
But I had this unspoken expectation of you that you would do something and you didn't. And so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But also I wish you would have reached out too. You know, I mean, there's kind of that little bit of both. But that was a recent story of where I was prone, because I would say in a vulnerable state, where I was grieving something, I was hurt. But I confronted him and apologize to him for something that he really didn't do, but something that I was holding on to. And because I think in those moments where, once again, we have an expectation that maybe it's not communicated and it's not met, and so in those moments, it's easy for the little things that the person does to continue to build upon the bitterness that we've already had in our lives.
Yeah. Okay, two things. What makes me think on that? One, it didn't just affect you and his relationship, but don't you think it bled over into other areas of your life?
Absolutely.
Because you only have, if you look at it, we only have, let's say if we have a cup, you only have so much you can pour out a day.
Yeah.
Right? So when you think of bitterness, anger, just selfishness, when you're it automatically, it's like somebody punches a hole in that cup and you're draining that lower and lower and lower and lower. You're not even pouring anything out yet. It just is sucking the life out of you.
Yeah.
That's why it's a poison.
Yeah.
That's why it's so damaging.
Yeah.
It's like the goodness in your life, the bitterness kind of pierces holes into what holds our goodness, and it just starts leaking out.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you've got nothing left to give away. So it's your kids, it's your wife, it's your coworkers, it's everybody now is starting to get a little piece of this bitterness.
Yes.
Because you just got nothing left to give.
Yes.
And then you're like, all right, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to try to get some good back into me. You put a discipline back in your life, and you're like, all right, I'm going to, whether that's reading the word, exercising, cold plunging, hot saunas, whatever it is you decide to do, meditation, rocks, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
You try go and get some good back.
Yep.
And before you know it, you're like, whew. And like 2 minutes later, you're back pissed off again.
Yep.
You know, the bitterness is just such a poison. It's a stealer.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's poked a hole in it. It's just draining out at all times.
Yeah.
Okay, so knowing and realizing that you can't contain it. Bitterness, we can't go like, hey, sit here. I'm just mad at this one friend, so stay there.
Yeah.
No one else is going to feel the wrath of it. It's everybody.
Bitterness bleeds.
It does. It does. It leaks on everybody. So knowing that, now let me ask, what did you do? How did you realize that you had bitterness? And then what did you do to recognize that and kind of right the wrong of that, or like remediate it, heal it? What was that?
Well, I do feel like I'm growing and becoming more emotionally aware. So when I saw me starting to point fingers at other people, I started to recognize that there's something that I'm wanting from someone that I'm now holding on to that I didn't get. Yeah. And so once again, it was a simple thing of just, man, I just wish you would have reached out, because I was once again in a vulnerable state. Yeah. So I recognized, okay, like there's things I'm processing, but ultimately I'm wanting people to show up for me the way that I hope that I would show up for someone too.
Yeah.
But he's not.
Different.
And once again, I'm kind of isolated on this individual guy.
Sure.
Great friend of mine, and once again, one of the fewer guys that really kind of knew what was going on. And so recognized, okay, I'm holding on to this. Yeah. Like I'm assuming the worst of him. So I think bitterness assumes the worst rather than assumes the best.
For sure.
So I recognize, like, okay, how can I start assuming the best? Like, how can I flip that around in my mind? Because that's up here.
Yes.
Which plays itself out. Once again, bitterness bleeds, so it plays itself out here. But then whenever I recognize that, okay, I have a choice. I can continue to point the finger, and I can continue to blame, and I can continue to say, man, why didn't he do that? Like all the things. Or I could flip the narrative in my mind to say, well, I'm going to assume the worst, but I am going to confront and let him into like where my headspace has been, and ultimately apologize for the bitterness that I held towards him. Yeah. And so fast forward several days after I get back into town and all of the things from that weekend, I did. He and I, and we're good friends. And so he and I were hanging out, and I said, hey man, I want to start by just saying, I held bitterness towards you because of an action that you did not take, but I'm sorry. This is not for you to apologize to me. Like I'm sorry that I didn't clearly communicate maybe an expectation that I wanted, but also for something that I held onto you. So so how I dealt with that was a conversation, not just like, okay, I'll release it.
Yeah.
I release it.
Right.
Like, no. I had to approach the person that I was holding this against and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because I've held something against you that ultimately is not mine to hold, and it's not yours to hold either.
Yeah.
So, but I had to get that out.
Yeah.
I couldn't just, as you kind of said, I couldn't just like keep it here. Okay, stay here.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
because otherwise, if I just say stay here, then
it
it will
doesn't.
filter itself
Yes.
into everything. And once again, as if I keep it there, the other things that this person does will only continue to add on to the bitterness and the frustration that I've had.
And it's the lens that you would look through. It's
Yes.
the lens that you would have towards everything moving forward. So therefore you
Yes.
would be stuck in the bitterness if you never
Mm.
addressed it. And I think one of the ways, listening to your story, that you recognized bitterness was when you start making it about you. Like, that's a good indicator where it's like, I didn't get what I thought I should get. And I think that I should have. And he should have done that. And they should have done this. And if they were right. And
Yes.
I mean, it just becomes everyone else's not doing
Mhm.
right. And
Yeah.
you didn't get what you need. It literally becomes all about you.
Yes.
All about you.
Yes.
And nothing about others.
Yes.
Nothing about your purpose, nothing about your calling, nothing about what
Yes.
you offered to give away.
Mhm.
It's solely about you.
Yes.
Bitterness is like literally looking through a pinhole at life with you as the only center focus. I mean, it's like, if I don't get what I want, if I don't have these things,
Yeah.
then, well, life's just terrible.
Mhm.
It's not a broad perspective of, looking at the situation from other people's perspectives or other things that are going on.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not, maybe that is what you needed, but maybe that's not even his personality. I'm sure if you had told him, hey buddy, I would love to hear from you for the next couple of days. Like,
For
I'm
sure.
probably, and sometimes we
Totally.
can't even articulate that at the moment that
Yeah.
we are in so much pain. So you can't beat yourself up
Correct.
over that.
Correct.
But that's the beauty of having the conversation you had with him. You're able to do some self-reflecting. So in part of you getting to that conversation, you did self-reflecting.
Mhm.
You started noticing the narrative in what you were hearing in yourself. Like, if I start hearing myself say I a lot, I really got to start doing something.
That's a word. That's a word for someone listening right now.
Yeah.
When you start to hear yourself say me or I
Yeah.
a lot, then
you've got to you still got to start doing some heart scanning.
Yeah.
One time I was volunteering is what I was doing, a lot of hours, and then in this organization, and then they came to me and said, would you consider working here? And I was like, oh, no, I've never actually thought about working here.
Mhm.
But now you kind of gave me that idea. So let me think about it.
Yeah.
And I went away and thought about it. And I was like, oh man, if I could work there and had some authority, I could get a whole lot of things changed, turn around. So yeah, so then my mind just starts ginning on that. Then I come back and they're like, yeah, we decided to go a different direction. We decided to hire somebody that's like overqualified with all these doctorates and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so I walk out of there and I get in my car. May I add to, by the way, that I was praying for God to show me what it was like. I counseled for a lot of years, and I was in a program where I helped drug addicts and alcoholics and all of that. A lot is a program that we ran. And, addiction's not been my vice in my life. I have lots of vices, but addiction is not one of them. And I was really asking, Lord, like, show me how I approach that. How do I have a full understanding or somewhat of an understanding of somebody that I'm sitting with that struggles with that?
Yeah.
And so I leave from that meeting. They tell me, no, we've gone a different direction. We're like, totally overqualified person. You're not qualified, da, da, da. And I leave out of there and I'm like, 8 minutes on the way home, I'm like, I'll show you. I'll show you. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this and I'm going to work out and I'm going to just do this and that. And I get like 8 minutes down the road. I've got myself so worked up and I've said I like 952 times.
Yeah.
That like, boom, the Lord just like kind of so sweetly, kicks you in the gut. Like, hey, how's that going? You, yourself, and I, like, how's that going? And he's like, you want to know what it's like to be addicted? You're addicted to yourself. You are so prideful right now.
Jeez.
It is so about you, my friend. It is so about you. What you gonna do? Huh? What you gonna do in this world?
Yeah.
And I just sobbed and I was like, Lord, please forgive me for being so self-absorbed.
Wow.
When I don't get what I want, I become all about me.
Yeah.
All about me. Watch how I can prove. Watch how I can show. Watch the bitterness just set in because I didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah.
Really, Amber? Really? It was one of the things the Lord was just like, if you want to know what addiction looks like, we all have it. We're all addicted to ourselves.
So true.
You know, it's in our nature to fall to pride, to just be consumed. Bitterness takes you to the place of pride. It will just consume you with pride.
It will.
You know, well, I didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah.
This should have happened. I mean, you just get so prideful. And pride is the fall of all mankind, right?
Yeah.
So in order to not get bitterness, we've got to watch our pride. And bitterness breeds pride. They go to hand in hand. So I had to repent and say, Lord, please forgive me. Forgive me for thinking that I know what's best and that I think I should get this and that I deserve this. Lord, forgive me. And it's funny because like 2 weeks later, the person they hired actually quit and they called me back and they said, actually, would you reconsider? I wanted to go, burn. No.
Told you.
No, my heart was in such a better place because if I had taken the job then, I would have
made it about you.
I would have 100%. When the Lord showed me that, I was just so humbled. I literally cried the first day I sat in the seat. I cried and thanked God for being the Lord to me and providing ways and open doors. And, you know, it was more like the favor that's on your life is so strong. We can't not hire you.
Yeah.
You know, even though all these people are more overqualified, more qualified than you, the favor and the humility and the willingness that you have is undeniable. I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't got rejected.
Yeah.
And then listen to the Lord, self-evaluated my heart, listen to the way I was talking to myself.
Yeah.
Right? All of those things, the same that I say with you when you recognize the bitterness, like when you started evaluating your thought life, when you started recognizing what you were going through, to lend you to acting on having that conversation with your friend, to which now you have realization about yourself that you can say, okay, now when I go through a hard situation like that and I reach out to somebody vulnerable like that, actually what I'm saying is, hey man, I would love it if you just check on the next couple of days. I'm going to be snowed under and probably emotional all over the place. And I know myself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reach out.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay busy because it's how I cope. So just know that if you just reach out to me and check on me, just make sure that I'm here. You now are able to have that conversation because of what you just went through.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
And learned from that and not letting the bitterness just take root.
Yes.
That's just recognizing that it's there. But if you had partnered with it, then it would have taken root. Then it grows, festers, and makes a bigger hole in your cup.
Yeah. And it's so bitterness bleeds.
Yep.
Bitterness breeds.
Yep.
Bitterness blinds.
I'm like, how many bees can we get?
I know. I'm just thinking like, okay. But yeah, I like that you said it's a lens that we see through because kind of in that bitterness blinds portion where it's like, man, when we're faced with, when we're living out of a place of me, then our eyesight is like this. Yep. Now I know for the camera, it's hard. If you're listening audio, know that my hand is over my eyes. But all I can see is this, and I can kind of see like cracks. I can see like through the cracks, and I can kind of see around. But the only really thing I see is my hand that's in front of my face, which is my preference, which is my wants, which is once again me.
Yeah.
And so I think how we can identify, like we can maybe discuss even some practicals here.
Yes.
Is I might be living, and I'll say might, I'll use that purposefully. Sure. I might be living out of bitterness when me is the first thing I see. I might be living out of bitterness when the only thing I see in you is the worst, or assume in you is the worst. Yeah. Because I recognize when I'm bitter, Like the finger is really easy to point.
Yeah.
And it's easy to project the worst onto that person or think that, oh, like, forget them, man, screw them.
Yeah.
Like,
and you have no control there.
No control. No
None
control
whatsoever.
So I might be
Sure.
operating out of bitterness, and that's a big might.
Yeah.
That's a big might.
Yeah.
So I think even some of those questions might be really helpful just to ask ourselves, where am I living out of bitterness towards this person, towards this job, because
and where
go ahead.
Go ahead. And then where are we living out of that bitterness? Like in what areas, finding the root of where that bitterness started, and then how do we okay, say we recognize it, right? Like say you recognize, gosh, yeah, that's me. Like I'm always talking about myself and I want to change that. I want to make some sort of change. What do I do to make that change? For me, it was, I had to put, bitterness causes the hard heart, right? So on my screensaver, I put a saying as, Lord, take out of me my own stony, stubborn heart and replace it with a tender, responsive heart. Like it was one of the, bitterness when taken root, you can't change overnight. It's one of those,
process.
It is a process. And you have to be willing to sit with yourself. You've got to be willing to say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live this way anymore. I'm going to
so exhausting.
It is exhausting.
I mean, it really is exhausting.
There's no peace. No peace.
Yes.
No peace. You got to get out of bitterness. It consumes
your thoughts.
Yes.
And once it's
a constant chaos creator.
Yeah.
It's a constant chaos creator.
Yeah.
Bitterness is.
Yeah.
It keeps the chaos. If you've got a lot of chaos in your life, I'm going to say you've got bitterness somewhere.
Yeah.
It just keeps feeding. Like where you're saying it bleeds over into your life and stuff. And so you got to get out of that. So some of the ways to get out of, practical steps, asking, everybody to look at your life and go, do you have chaos? Are you saying I and me a lot? Are you focusing on yourself? Can you only look at your way? Are you the victim? Are you the victim all the time? And if so, how do you say, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to start making some changes in my behavior. So therefore, I got to make a change in my heart. And for me, that was a deep dive into allowing Jesus into my heart again and just say, Lord, just purge from me my own selfish ambitions that are in there and create in me a clean, responsive heart.
Yeah.
And literally going to him and allowing him to do that, which means daily I had to say, I'm going to choose to be kind. I'm going to choose to love. I don't care how I feel. You can be depressed. You can not like the person. You can not like your situation, whatever. Today, I'm going to wake up. It's going to be a good day.
Yeah.
Today, I'm going to choose to say these 5 statements today.
Yeah.
Today's a good day.
Yeah.
I love me. I love my family. I love what I'm doing. It's going to be I'm going to be an encouragement to everyone that I meet today.
Yeah.
Today, I'm going to do these 5 things. That's what I'm going to do today. And am I going to be perfect at all of them? Probably not.
Yeah.
But am I going to try today? Yes, I am. Because yesterday looked like what yesterday looked like, and I'm tired of being yesterday.
Yeah.
The only way you change yesterday is do something different today.
Yeah.
So what today, where can you look for bitterness in your life? And then what today can you say, I'm going to change that bitterness to look like kindness?
The real quick, just to close, but if I always do what I've always done, I will always have what I've always had.
Yep.
And so it really is, I have to do something different.
Yeah.
If I'm living in bitterness, I have to do something different. I love the daily affirmations.
Yep.
I love the confronting the person maybe that you're bitter with. We've had the conversation around love before, in love, having these conversations in love.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely knowing that there's action that has to take. I can't think it away.
That's right.
Like I really have to take action to retrain and rewire my thoughts.
Yep.
So
it's the antidote for bitterness is you got to do something about it in love.
So let's be better, not bitter.
That's a tough one. That's tough. Bitter's tough.
It is.
Yeah.